What's up, y'all? What's up, y'all? Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of the Figuring Shit Out podcast, or the F.S.O pod. It's your girl, Leah, and today we're going to be getting into a topic that I am really excited to talk about, and that is being adult. Deal with your feelings. As usual, just sharing my personal opinion and my perspective that nobody asked for and probably nobody cares about. I don't care. I'm going to give it anyway. So with that being said, if you're a returning listener or you're hearing me for the first time, want to start it off with saying thank you. Appreciate you for tuning in. So go ahead and grab your snacks, grab your loofah with your soap, put your feet up, whatever you do when you're listening to your podcast. Sit back and go ahead and listen to me talk my ish. All right, y'all. So I said it a little bit in that intro. I said deal with your feelings. And so that just translates to today's topic being process your feelings. Process your feelings, process your feelings, process your feelings. I feel like that's why we got so many just emotionally stunted people, so many emotionally unavailable people, so many people that need therapy, so many toxic relationships and trauma bonds, and just all of the above and everything in between and around and underneath and on the side and on top of it, because it's just crazy, man. Like, I've come to realize that we do not, like, not we, you know, I'm not about to lump myself in with this, you know, particular demographic of people. But, you know, as a society, we don't deal with our feelings. You know, we don't process our feelings. We don't process our emotions. And that is number one, man. If you just take the time, especially if it's a heavy emotion, if it's a deep one, you know, like anger, hurt, you know what I mean? Like, just genuine sadness. Like, if you like despair, grief, like if you're feeling these things, process them, you know. Again, in the past, I've been guilty of just pushing things under the, you know, under the table, sweeping stuff under the rug, and, oh no, I'm chill, I'm cool, you know, going through certain experiences and just, you know, brushing it off and, you know, oh, I'm fine, and not really realizing just how much it truly affected me all across the board until I actually like took the time to self-reflect. And I learned that, damn, like, I feel like a lot of our baggage, again, this is personally, my personal opinion is that I feel like our baggage genuinely stems from it's all of our unhealed wounds. It's all of our unhealed trauma. It's all of our unhealed hurt, you know. It's especially, you know, with the negative connotations, you know. But you gotta process your feelings, man. You know, like, one thing that I tell myself all the time, especially if I'm feeling a very kind of prominent emotion, you know. And I'm not talking about just like, you know, like the little, like you get a little annoyed throughout the day, or, you know, you get a little irritated, or you feel a little disappointed because, you know, maybe you wanted to go do this, but, you know, maybe it was closed or something like that. I'm not talking about, you know, like emotions like that. I mean, like the big ones that kind of, you know, kind of stop you in your tracks for a second. You're like, whoa, you know, when I'm feeling those emotions, I tell myself every single time, it's okay for me to feel them. You know, I validate myself first and foremost, because I feel like that's not something that a lot of us got, you know, maybe growing up, or, you know, in friendships and familial relationships, romantic relationships, whatever it is. A lot of us didn't get the opportunity to be told it's okay for what we're feeling, you know? So when I am experiencing those kinds of emotions, I allow myself to feel them, because that's the first step in processing them. You know, I kind of think about it like, if let's say I'm really mad, right? Like something just like it pissed me off. Like it just, like I'm Hulk smash type angry, right? And I just sweep it under the rug. I'm like, you know what? I'm fine. Like maybe I'll stomp around and be angry for, 10, 15 minutes, which in reality is me, because I am that kind of person that I get over stuff really, really quickly. I don't care. I don't hold grudges. I don't stay mad. I don't argue. I don't do none of that. But, and anyway, I have just super, just angry. Just I blow up, or I'm just, I'm like, you can tell I'm mad. You can tell I'm pissed off. You can tell. And I'm like, I'm fine. And then I just walk away. And then all of a sudden, maybe an hour and a half later, like I'm calmer, but I'm maybe not, like, I'm not necessarily like all the way back to like being myself, but like I'm calmer than I was. Like I was like, I let it go in a sense, and then let's say something small happens and that irritates me, and then so now I'm irritated about that. And then let's say maybe something about that little situation that irritated me got me thinking about the big situation that had me pissed off. So now I was kind of irritated at that, but now I'm thinking about the big thing that pissed me off. So now I'm back to being super pissed off about whatever thing made me mad, right? So now I'm just carrying around this anger. I'm probably having an attitude towards people. I'm probably, not being a pleasant motherfucker to be around. I'm probably just, like, you know what I mean? And then I start unintentionally taking it out on people. I start being rude to people. I start, just disregarding people, or just giving an attitude, and just unnecessary interactions and unnecessary damage that I'm leaving in my wake for nothing. If from the get-go, when I first got super pissed off, if I just allowed myself to really like process it and not just, oh, I'm fine. And no, that's not processing your emotions. Like sit down, put your thinking cap on and really process it. Really, acknowledge the fact that you're angry or you're hurt or you're sad. Like acknowledge whatever the emotion is. Think about why you're feeling that emotion, or why that emotion is affecting you the way it is. Like what is it about the situation that happened that is causing you to feel this way? And then, really get to not even like you got to have like a whole, like awakening kind of situation, but just, really think about it. Really be like, damn, why am I mad? Well, dang, okay. Like, what about that? Like, pissed me off so much. Like, or what about what they said or what they did hurt me? Or like, why am I having this reaction? Like, why am I feeling this way? Because once you understand the why you feel the way you feel, you will start to make sure that you don't allow yourself to go to that negative headspace, so to speak. Not necessarily negative, but that angry, or you won't immediately react in that particular, negative emotion that situation or that thing or that feeling may bring out of you, right? And I feel like it's important to do that, because I think that's again, that's our baggage. That's where our triggers come from. We don't process our feelings enough, and we don't sit with ourselves, and we don't fully try to figure out why we feel the way we feel or what it is we're feeling. Because sometimes you may think you're angry, but in reality, you're hurt. You know what I mean? Or in reality, you're super disappointed, or maybe you're really sad, but your brain is initially kind of interpreting it as anger, because you don't necessarily know how you feel, but your brain knows, I don't like this feeling. And, maybe anger is the first thing that you kind of like, maybe it's a default, you know what I mean? So you're just your natural kind of like response is, I'm going to get mad, or I am mad now, and again, I think when you know better, you do better. So if I know, if someone said something to me and it like again, for lack of a different example, but someone says something to me and it really pissed me off, right? And then if I take the time to sit and really deal with that and acknowledge how I feel, process how I feel, have that moment of, okay, this is what it was that made me mad. Okay, it wasn't necessarily them saying this. It was the fact that they said this, at the very end, it makes me think of this, or it brought me back to that, or it brought me, especially if it brings out a very deep emotion and a very big reaction out of you. I think anything that causes a certain level of response definitely requires some reflection. Like, again, if someone says something to you or they do something to you and it causes you to go Hulk smash, maybe that's something that you should probably really try to reflect on and figure out what it is about that situation that is causing you to react that way, or that would cause you to react that way. Like for, using myself as an example, people wouldn't know it and you wouldn't know it in general, but sorry, I just realized how weird me saying you would know it, like as if I'm talking to somebody, but, like, you know what I mean? Anyway, you wouldn't know it by just knowing me, but I have a really, 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 really bad temper, like a really bad temper, but I don't like being mad. Like, I don't like arguing. I don't like being mad. I don't like being angry. Like, I don't like it, and I was always that kind of person that I had a very impulsive temper. So like, in the sense of, I was always the person that was hitting stuff when I got mad. I've broken my pinky from hitting things. I punched a vending machine in middle school, in high school. I've punched a little hole in my shower before. I've punched walls. I've punched trees. I've hit a lot of things because I've just been so angry, but it's like that kind of like anger that, it's just like you kind of flash real quick, and you're just like, nah, and you just, you get that mad and you just hit something. And then like 9 times out of 10 after I hit it, I'm like, damn, like, cause I'm messing my hand. But, either way, I had to do a lot of self-reflection, especially in those moments when I would get to that uncomfortable, headspace of being angry or being mad, because I had to, figure out what it was about whatever situations I was in that was triggering me. What is it that's being said or that's being done that is causing this kind of reaction out of me? Because I don't like this kind of reaction. I don't like feeling this way. I don't like hitting stuff. Like, and it's just not, don't hit stuff, people. Like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. But, either way, you know what I mean? Like, and now I don't allow myself to be in certain situations, which is, as I mentioned earlier, I don't argue, especially in like romantic relationships and stuff. I don't do it because what's the point? Obviously I feel the way I feel, you feel the way you feel. We're not seeing eye to eye, and that's okay. But what we're not going to do is start getting disrespectful towards each other. You're not going to raise your voice at me. I'm not going to raise my voice at you. We're not about to start cussing at each other, calling each other out our names. Like, we're not doing that. That's not about to happen. So let's go ahead and, put a pin in it. I'm gonna go ahead and step away, or maybe, we could either go do something together. Whatever it is, this situation, it needs to be kind of put to bed for a bit until we can come back and properly try to communicate and effectively communicate about this situation. You know what I mean? And until we figure out a proper solution, because the argument thing ain't doing nothing for us, Which is another reason why, like I said, I don't hold grudges. Because I don't like being in those headspaces. I don't like having those negative emotions, about anything. I just don't feel like it's worth it. I'd rather, just like it's cool. But yeah, I feel like it's really important to process your emotions and your feelings. And I feel like when you do that, it teaches you how to be able to handle things, and I feel like a lot of that speaks volumes on your emotional maturity and your emotional intelligence, because if you can process your feelings and, you have that handle on yourself and you understand yourself in that kind of capacity, or you have the ability to understand yourself in that kind of capacity, it makes it 10 times easier for you to be able to handle someone else in that capacity, or be able to understand someone else and be empathetic towards somebody else, or relate to somebody else, you know, and you can help be the problem solver in the situation instead of, you know, being the gasoline and adding fuel to the fire. You know, you can help be the firefighter and you can help extinguish the fire instead of, well, I'm mad and I know you're mad, but I don't care. I'm mad because this is how I feel, or I don't even really know how I feel. I just know I'm mad. So I'm just going to react and I'm going to say this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to move like this and I'm going to move like that. And I know that that's just going to make you mad. And then now we're both just angry as hell, screaming at each other, mad at each other. And there's nothing, you know, there's no productivity. There's nothing that's coming out of this. That's good. You know what I mean? So yeah, I hope this is going to sound, I can't remember if I've touched on it in past episodes. And I do know that there's certain sayings and words that I say a lot, and I am definitely working on them. Again, this podcast is just a reflection of me, first and foremost, in the sense of I'm learning and I'm growing every day, and I'm working on getting better, and I am getting better. And yeah, like I said, I don't got figured out. I don't have it all figured out. So I'm figuring it out as I go. But yeah, as I said, I don't know if I mentioned this in previous episodes, but therapy is phenomenal. When I actually took therapy for real and I did the actual work, you know, because again, a lot of people feel like when you go to therapy, it's not just like you can go to therapy all day, every day, you know, 100%. You can, you know, whether you pay for it, whether you get it free through your job or certain services, whatever it is, you can go all the time. But if you aren't actively putting the work in, like therapy is on you as the person. It's not on your therapist. It's not, you know, your therapist can't. And most of the time, especially if you have a good therapist, they're not going to force you to talk. Like they'll sit there and stare at you. If you don't want to talk, they're not going to force you. They're not going to, you know what I mean? So you got to put the work in. And I think that's what I love. Well, what I loved and what I still love about therapy, and I do want to get back into it, you know, is that it really held me accountable because I had to actually put the work in. I had to have those deep realizations with myself. I had to have those deep conversations with myself. I had to call myself out. My therapist had to call me out. Like, you know what I mean? I had to talk about so much and I had to process so much, and I had to process things in a way that was uncomfortable for me, ways that I wasn't used to. I wasn't used to, you know, hell, even communicating with myself, you know, if I'm being completely honest, not just learning to communicate with others, but just really learning how to communicate, you know, for me, you know. It was rough. It was rough. It was rough, but honestly, it was probably the best. Like, I believe it was probably about, yep. It was probably about 2 years that I was in therapy. And I only stopped because I left that old company. And the services were free. And so I was no longer able to see that therapist. But I might maybe try to Google him. Cause I honestly don't want to find another one. I think he did wonders for, just the tools that he gave me and the things that I learned from him and because of him, I will always be grateful for. But yeah, I'm a big component and advocate for therapy now. You know, I tried it a couple times before that and I was always like, man, this is stupid. I ain't doing this. Now I'm like, nah, I will gladly go and jump on someone's couch with my feet up. So anyway, you won't believe, like, well, no, I wouldn't, like, not really, like, you know, like I said, I don't want to start, you know, I don't want to have to start all over with somebody because, like, damn. But, you know, I might have to. We'll see. But anyway, yeah, you know, process your feelings. If you don't know how, go to therapy. If you are learning how, still go to therapy. Or at least do something. You know, but process your feelings in a healthy way, you know, because I know people can sit there and be like, well, I do process my feelings. I drink, I get messed up, I do this. No, I'm talking about like not with unhealthy vices, not with, you know, distractions, like genuinely process your feelings and your emotions. It is so much better for you in the long run. So much better. So yeah. Once again, y'all, if you stayed and you stuck around and you listened to me yip yap, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, man. If you didn't hear with the previous episode and, with the beginning of this one, adding some changes to the podcast, starting to figure some stuff out, try some new things. So yeah, we finally got some figured I add a little, flavor, a little vibe to the discussion, with a little bit of intro and outro music. So I hope y'all like it. Again, thank you for listening and tuning in. I appreciate you, man. And with that, we're gonna go ahead and end this one. So live love life, be kind. Until next time.